Hello, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take in the waistband of a pair of jeans through the center back seam. First, I'm going to remove the belt loop that's in the way of this. I'm also going to be removing any tags that are in the way, and then detaching the waistband from the main seat of the jeans. Now, the taking in from the center is one option. You can also take in from the waistband using darts, and those darts run along each pocket, so they're centered over each pocket, and they're darts, and they bring in the extra width that way. That is best if you are taking in a lot, like definitely 2 inches or more. You can consider that. This particular client, she did have the waist needed to be reduced, but then pretty quickly her body, like her hips and her butt, did fill out that space. Like the jeans were very well fitted below her waist, but it was just this smaller space around her waist that she wanted brought in. If there was a lot more fabric and need to be taken in more significantly down below the waist through the seat, then I would do the darts. That would be a good time for the darts, because otherwise it throws out the proportions. The pockets are brought in too close together and it's just going to look weird. But in this case, since I wasn't bringing in too much from the seat, then this is the perfect method. Here I'm removing the waistband about several inches beyond what it's gonna need to be taken in. There were these weird plastic pieces in the seam line. I have no idea why. Some of the things that you find when you're taking apart clothes, but they were gross, so I was getting them out of the way. And then trimming off these frayed pieces, just those, so things are nice and clean and visible. It's just easier to work with. Now I'll draw out the new seam lines below the waistband, see where it curves. And I take a hip curve ruler, and yeah, you can see how dramatically that curves back, because I couldn't take too much out of the seat because it was not baggy. It was definitely fitted in that area. Then removing the stitching, these chain stitches from this flat fell seam. And this is the main seam that we're going to be changing in the seat area. Now this flat-felled seam, it clasps together, it folds together very closely and uniquely. So I'm taking that apart. I used to, in this alteration, I thought I needed to replicate that or re-replicate that folding, and that was quite tricky and it never looked as good. I'm pretty sure they use machines, specialized machines in the factories to make these. But then I learned that you can just fold it right on, like fold one seam right on top of the other, and you don't have to like join them together as they originally were. you can just literally place them right on top of each other, and that makes it so much easier. And yeah, you can't tell from the outside, you can't tell from the inside. It all looks the same and it works great. I'm taking some more of that out because I realized the curve back into the seat at the very bottom there was just a little too dramatic. So I had to bring it down a little bit more so that the line and everything just goes smoothly into the original seam. And then I do my seam allowance. You can study the seam allowance that was originally there. One seam allowance is larger, like the fold, and then the other fold is a little bit smaller. So one of them I did 1/2, and then the smaller one I did about 1/4 of an inch. Here I'm trimming off the excess, and see, I'm gonna fold those. One gets folded one way, and then the other one gets folded the opposite way, and then placed on top. Here I go to the ironing board, fold those, and then iron them. I am really careful with this because once I iron it, that's it. My markings get ironed out, they disappear. But if you have a really good iron and you just press pretty hard and get those fold lines really clear, then it's not going to be an issue. You just follow the fold lines and those are your new seam. That's your new seam. So you see the one underneath is already folded, and then the one on top I fold and then place over the other one. The key for this is you don't want any frayed edges to be poking out from either side. So the raw edges, you want them fully covered up by the other seam. Then I take some pins and pin those exactly together where they need to be.
Yeah, you gotta see like the details. It's helpful. Really see the details.
And then I'll check the inside just to make sure the raw edges are all enclosed and there's no raw edges showing.
Done?
Yeah.
And now this step is not necessary, but it's very, 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 very useful and helpful. Just baste down that whole line that you just pinned. That's gonna make sure everything's set in place. It holds things together better than the pins, especially because you have to move this whole thing through the sewing machine. And a lot of times things shift and it's just harder to control with the pins, but with basting it, it works great. And I just go down the middle. I'm careful because if I go too close to the edge or where I know the seam line is going, then I'm gonna sew over the basting stitches, and then it's harder to remove when I'm done. Here on the outside, I'm going to sew the first line, and that's really close to the edge. So the folded edge that you see, that's my first line. The second line is going to be about 1/4, a little over 1/4 away from that first line. See, I'm measuring right here. It's about 1/4 of an inch. Go down there into the joining up with the original seam. Here is that new seam all finished. And And here's on the inside. It does look a little ugly. I'm gonna zoom in. You can see where that fold gets a little thicker. Not the prettiest, but I just flipped that up just to make sure everything's enclosed. It is. Make sure it's not trying to flip out of that seam and make a mess. So everything's enclosed nicely. Then, yeah, just gotta go and take care of this waistband. Then in the very middle, I just cut straight through. I'm opening it up here. The only thing is this top stitch that's in the way. Some waistbands, they're doubled up, so they'd be 2 layers of fabric, one on the front, one on the back, all stitched together, but this is just a single piece that is folded. Excuse the crazy dog. Then I remove the top stitching, and now I can sew these 2 pieces of the waistband together to make them smaller so that they fit the seat. And the inside is what I'm actually sewing. So I'll transfer those marks and that new seam line to the inside, because that's what I'm going to be sewing on. That's what I'm going to be following. And then match these. You want to match up those fold lines and distress marks carefully, just because it just looks cleaner, and with most jeans they do the distressing, and so you can see the patterns and how everything goes together pretty precisely. So if you get it off, it's more obvious. So I just try to make sure like all the original fold lines are right on top of each other. Then after I sew that seam, I trim it down a bit, and I also clip these corners. It just makes folding it back into the original shape more easy, and so there's not those little corners sticking out. Just keeps it to the inside, and then I'll give that a good press. There it is, pressed, and stitch it back onto the seat of the pants. This is a little bit of a trickier part because it's a top stitch and it goes through both sides, and you can miss one of the sides. It's very easy to do. One of the ways I can prevent this is just check where everything is. I just stick a pin through there and say, okay, if I'm stitching through there, is it going to catch that other side? Not foolproof. The best way would be to baste it. There's some other tricks that you can do, but I just like to save a little time here and just give it my best shot. Here I'm going over the center of the seam, like the very center. It was very thick, so it was a struggle to get across, and as a result it did fall off that other part, so I did have to redo that. Here's a great pro tip. Here's a metal hammer, like a metal mallet you can get at the hardware store, and flatten that thick fabric down, and it made it way easier to sew, and it was more accurate. This is the finished result. There's the outside. I did sew back on the loop, so the belt loop and the tags. There's my stitching. I just got off barely in the middle, but it still is holding fine. It's just a little bitty space. There's the before and then you'll see the after. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.